Victory. How do you define it? At what point is a battle won? It's not a question of how to achieve it, but instead of when something can even be considered a triumph. Can victory be decided before the first shot is even fired? Or do you believe that as long as one person remains standing, then no battle is truly yet lost? Maybe you look for a specific marker, a white flag waving amidst the embers and smoke, or the delivery of newspapers bringing good tidings of the well-fought war. Maybe it's more abstract for you than any of those things. Ultimately, as with most things in life, it comes down to perspective.
And the same can be said about the success of an anime series. Sure, you could say that just being given the chance to be adapted is a victory in and of itself. After all, animation is not an easy process. It's expensive and meticulous, something we might forget given how much anime releases nowadays. Still, some might argue that until they watch it, a series' success is seldom guaranteed. There are many examples of stories being lambasted and considered failures due to mistakes disconnected from the original source material's quality. But this doesn't stop the opposite from also being true. Some adaptations are regarded so highly that their victories transcend the source's merits, becoming the peak of its significance in the ever-changing zeitgeist. So all in all, victory is contingent on interpretation, and interpretation is reliant on an audience. Pretty simple stuff, right? You watch an anime, you judge it, you talk about it, and you eventually formulate your own idea of whether or not it won according to your criteria. But what happens when a series is released that goes beyond just creating discussions of its value, and instead becomes a cultural landmark for endless discourse where neither side concedes? What happens when no white flag is thrown? When abstract definitions of success fail because a clear consensus remains out of reach? How do we define victory given such conditions? Can you even consider it a victory? A victory exempt from traditional discussions and guidelines for what makes something win? Well, personally, I think such an example does exist. And it's derived from a goddamn erotic video game novel. School Days is the 2007 anime adaptation of the visual novel of the same name, released all the way back in 2005. Due to this, the story the anime tells is sourced from but not the same as the ones that can be told from the game. The story itself focuses on first-year high school students Makoto, Kotonoha, and Sekai, and the trials and tribulations of their messy love lives. It begins unassuming enough. Makoto wants to confess to Kotonoha, and Sekai helps him. They get together, and then everything flies off the rails. And then off the necks. And the uteri. Jesus Christ. Going in blind, School Days presents itself as a traditional romance story before devolving into a mess of toxic relationships, lies, and, well, bloodshed. This does kinda come out of nowhere, but understanding the original source material makes it clear that this was the plan from the very beginning. As for whether or not this makes it a good story, well, that's not the scope of this discussion. School Days, despite being nearly 20 years old, is a series that remains both well talked about and divisive. Sure, if you look on sites like MyAnimeList, Crunchyroll, and IMDb, the scores are on the lower end, so it might seem like it's all done in the service of criticizing the series, right? But then you notice forums, comments, reviews, and even the number of people who continue to recommend the series to less than informed newcomers. Arguments from both sides persist and clash, which invites more people to engage, no matter their stake in the conversation. Some people love how it twists and contorts the high school romance genre, an uncomfortable tension that feels queasy and nauseating, before releasing it all in a sequence of unfortunate events. Others comment on the character writing choices, knowing that beyond being unlikable, the cast themselves are poorly written and badly framed, and many others lie somewhere in the middle. But one thing that can't be denied is that School Days lives on. Gory and shocking as it may be, and even if statistically speaking it will be more than likely seen in a negative light, the series is kept alive by those who know of it and spread the word. But why? Well, because the story has become more than what it offers. It's become a cultural touchstone of sorts. In layman's terms, you haven't seen shit till you've seen School Days. Looking for recommendations, getting innocuous replies, and being lured into a false sense of security before ultimately being appalled to then formulate your opinion online becomes the norm when watching the series. It's a process almost all of us will go through and is what granted the anime its ubiquity. Something most series reach through quality, marketing, or whatever else makes the magic formula to contemporary success is achieved through subversion and the shock value. Now, a lot of people tend to attach a negative connotation to that term, which is fair. Stories that rely on contrived progression points for the sake of being shocking can be unappealing. After all, we all love a good twist, but not when it's done for commercialization instead of for the story. But School Days doesn't just use shock value, it defines itself through it. Without its infamous turns, it wouldn't have been able to carve out its mark. That's why I can't help but respect School Days in this aspect. All in all, should we remove the not-so-wholesome parts, it's a really simple story. It would have been extremely forgettable, with its only real footprint having been that it was adapted from an erotic game. It could have chosen to follow traditional story tropes and die by the wayside. But it didn't. It chose to leave a lasting impression. One that admittedly the story had been building up to since the beginning. Like a soldier with nothing to lose but everything to gain, it made its last stand with all it had, answering the question of victory or Valhalla with the firm, double homicide. It went down swinging, making sure it got its licks in and left us with a few scars to remember it by. And the series didn't just know this would happen, it wanted it to. Animes are meant to be profitable. They advertise and persuade viewers to look into the original source material. So if that means a few people have to be traumatized, then so be it. With all that, it seems pretty clear, right? School Days won not because it was good or bad, but because it made people remember it, regardless of their opinions. Victory became based on publicity and profit. Seems kinda superficial, but a win is a win. But there's more to it. Remember what I said earlier. Victory is contingent on interpretation, which itself is reliant on an audience. And this is where I think not even the series creators could have predicted how the show would have been received. Because no matter who you are, be it an oracle, a prophet, or even the second coming of Christ, no one can foresee the most unpredictable, rabid, and frankly insane group of people on the internet. Anime fans. The modern cultural landscape of discussion and discourse is, well, fucked. It's a really fucked. Currently, emotions dominate conversations and the medium enforces hyperspeed reactions that are shared at a similarly fast rate. You create an opinion, choose a side, and circulate ideas in that corner until your last breath. Anonymity allows for homogeneity, and discussions can quickly turn into an us versus them where the majority are the ones who answer our earlier question. Victory is determined by the winning side. Yeah, dumbass, of course it is. The opinion of the larger group can quickly become the de facto, and cultural consensus is created through numbers and brute force, as polarization becomes incentivized and discussions are quick to start and end with only one extreme making it out on top. So, where and how do School Days fit into this? Simple. It doesn't. School Days wanted to create attention by challenging the expectations of its viewers. Back in 2007, this was effective and allowed it to carve out its place in the mind of the audience, as many people were just starting to get used to the medium's presence on all of its quirks, tropes, and vibes. It made itself difficult to categorize and incentivized constant engagement where it presented no clear answer and instead looked to the viewers for a conclusion. But now, in the era of cultural segregation, its impact is even more profound. People watch the anime, and once their thoughts are well in order, they throw them out into the wild to find the hill that they wish to die on. Usually, at this point, the earlier process I detailed happens, but in this case, it doesn't. School Days crafted a story that was meant to fuel debate, but it didn't expect that in a few years' time, the environment around it would shape into one that thirsted for a clear winner no matter what. People are constantly seeking answers and validation for those answers, but because of the story's refusal to conform and both sides being so adamant about their point, no consensus is formed and thus no white flag is raised. You end up with a constant loop because it has become so culturally accepted that you have to watch the series and then fall into either one of two camps, effectively becoming a litmus test to add more and more to the ranks of an unending war. Of soldiers who are fighting because they're all searching for a clear-cut victory that School Days never offers. This creates an interaction between two conflicting philosophies, of a story that refuses to be blanded, finding itself in an environment that looks for things to be in proper and orderly categories. A push and pull occurs not just between those who see things with perspective A and perspective B, but between the series and the audience as a whole. Discourse is manufactured with no end in sight. No ground is won or lost, the numbers of each army only grow and the stalemate persists. And yet, amidst that chaos and turmoil, within the no man's land of online altercations, this series thrives. Because in reality, the series doesn't care what either side thinks. Just that we do think. The simple act of being acknowledged, spread, loved, ridiculed, and discussed is the true form of School Days' success. This has turned the series into this inescapable, unkillable, and frankly, uncaring concept. Good or bad, it just becomes a fancy label for it to continue to live on in the minds of those who've watched it. And it did so not just on its own merit, but because of the way the landscape needlessly seeks a homogenized reaction. It's this very mentality that School Days thrives upon. It's a series that was made to create division, being thrust into a world where division has become the norm. The idea that things are supposed to go a certain way or thoughts are supposed to be X or Y is what allows it to be continuously manifest in an environment that doesn't quite accommodate it, but does invigorate it. Because when you have an audience that is stubborn about wanting unanimity, and a series that is steadfast in its unconformity, you end up with a feedback loop that puts less importance on the content of the actual discussion and more on the act of engagement itself. And what is engagement if not perspective given life? To put it another way, victory is contingent on perspective. But that doesn't mean that the formation of perspective itself isn't a victory. And that loop, that continuous formation and clashing is what keeps it alive. As Mexican Nobel laureate Octavio Paz put it, if life is diversity, then death is uniformity. And as the masses struggle for the show to conform to one single status, the series refuses to die and continues to live off of our own turmoil. School Days is both insane and perfectly both through design and happenstance genius. It is chaos given design and fueled by what is essentially a perpetual motion engine. Because at a time when consumerism is at its highest, where art and media are treated as disposable and reactions don't range from but must either be black or white, School Days won by creating self-sustaining discourse. Nuance is becoming increasingly less valued, and the dichotomous approach is being pushed with very little room in between. But that tried and true approach doesn't work here. Because it doesn't matter whether you like it or hate it, whether you think the characters are staggering representations of human depravity or cardboard cutouts that have as much depth as a puddle. It wins because you watched it. You remember it, you talk about it, and now more people will continue to remember and talk about it. This series very well could outlive us because as long as there is one person who watches it, gets shocked by it, posts about it online, and then spreads word of it, the anime is effectively immortal. And guess what? Whether you think it deserves to be memorialized means little to the undying story. It is the mark of us being complicit in our own bickering. It is the catalyst for endless debate and hills on which many have died. In an incredible twist of irony, the audience's endless desire but inability to decide whether to celebrate its success or revel in its failure becomes its own form of triumph. Artistry, quality, and emotional impact pale in comparison to its cultural significance as the anime that rebelled against its own audience. The anime that bit the hand that fed it but continues to be nourished by it. An anime where our failure to prove its true status only serves to feed into its legacy. This is School Days' true victory. And we're the losers for not being able to forget it. Guess who finally found their password after half a year? This is probably a bit of a strange step to take, considering the last video was so fluffy, fun, and personal, but I think that this was a topic that was worth delving into. Plus, to be honest, over the course of writing this essay, I came to love the series as a concept more and more, and honestly, it's grown on me a lot. Not to say I'm choosing a side, since, well, everything above, but I'd be lying if I didn't at least pay my respects to the dead horse, especially with how much we've been beating it. Of course, I also want to end things with the note that this video is an analysis, but also an opinion piece. Nothing I said is concrete, and I'm far from an arts major who can actually give you a thorough rundown of everything that makes this series tick. So the best way, as always, is to take things with a grain of salt and formulate your own ideas. Anyway, more videos are planned since the pair of idiots running this channel finally got a break from college. So expect a few more releases from this one. No spoilers on what those will be, but hey, the spice of life might be variety, but anticipation is what tempers our taste buds. So, with all that said, I hope you found this to some degree entertaining, informative, if not a little disturbing. Take care, and thanks for tuning in.